a small-town music legend killed in a hit-and-run.
This wasn't something accidental. Somebody floored it and ran somebody over and then left them to die.
I wanted to know why. How could somebody do this?
Loved ones suspect it's the result of an escalating family feud.
The brothers, we're looking for them. They have some kind of beef.
If anyone could have done or would have done anything to him, it would be them.
But when detectives find the hit-and-run vehicle, its owner identifies another suspect.
She's making statements like, I'm gonna kill him. He doesn't deserve the air he breathes.
She's in the car and she's the one that ran him over.
But can he be trusted?
Do you intend to answer truthfully every question?
Investigators soon find themselves on the trail of a killer driven by revenge.
Those pictures were not going anywhere, and she was going to be the laughingstock of Cowpens.
She was mad. She was very furious. She threatened him several times.
It was an innocent man's life that got taken. Answers still need to be served.
Tucked away in upstate South Carolina is the tiny town of Cowpens.
It kind of modern-day Dukes of Hazzard, everybody knows each other.
It's just before 3 a.m. on December 27, 2015, when some passersby make an alarming discovery.
They call 911 and state that they had seen a body in the roadway on Cemetery Street in Cowpens.
First responders find no identification on the man, but one of the officers on the scene realizes she saw him about an hour ago.
Earlier that night, at about approximately 2 o'clock in the morning, she was at a local gas station. While she's in line checking out, she sees the individual, Brent Tesnier.
She knew him. Everybody pretty much knew everybody down there. She could tell he had been drinking and might need a ride home.
She does try to offer him a ride. He says he's fine. He lives, not far down the road, maybe a mile, and he's walked this route many times.
At first glance, it's unclear what happened to Brent after he left the convenience store.
They can't really see any sort of physical signs of harm. They don't see a gunshot wound or anything like that. Officer Wolf thought maybe it had something to do with him being under the influence or some sort of a heart attack.
But once paramedics load Brent into an ambulance, the officer spots an important clue.
There were some tire marks or tread marks on his clothing. So she starts to believe that maybe that this individual was hit with a car.
Do we need to have highway patrol out here in case this was just a random hit and run by a drunk driver?
To local police, a late-night hit-and-run accident seems likely. But there is another, more disturbing possibility.
Right near where he was hit, there looked like there was tire tracks.
There's no way to tell what direction the car was coming from, how fast it was going, what kind of car it was. But it appeared that the car veered off the road, then came back onto the road.
They have to consider that the driver may have intentionally swerved to mow down Brent.
It was possible that somebody floored it and ran somebody over and then left them to die.
The problem for investigators is that there isn't enough evidence at the scene to determine which situation they're dealing with. So as the ambulance rushes Brent to the ER, they run a records check in the hopes of learning more about their victim.
So at this point in time, they start to really develop a picture of the victim in order to determine, who could have possibly done this to him.
Brent Tesnier was born January 14, 1979 in Spartanburg, South Carolina. From an early age, he seemed destined to become a musician.
Everybody knew the Tesniers. We all just came to their house for all the music get-togethers, all the holidays. Everything was done involved around music.
I've been playing all my life. I was raised in the music. The biggest part of majority of Brent's life was his music. I bought his drum set at age 4, and about all he wanted to do, he carried his drumsticks around everywhere he went, rat-a-tatting on everything he could.
He started moving up to singing, playing the guitar, and things like that.
By his early teens, Brent was a regular on the local music circuit, and he seemed willing to do whatever it took to succeed.
Brent didn't finish school because he figured out the lifestyle of a teenager, and other things was more important to him at the time.
Part of that lifestyle included partying after his gigs.
Brent did have some substance abuse issues. He drank alcohol.
I wish he'd just stayed in the church more than the bars, but that was a part of their life.
Despite his demons, one of Brent's biggest supporters was his high school sweetheart, Jennifer Bragg. The young couple's lives were changed forever when Jennifer unexpectedly got pregnant while they were teens.
He had his first daughter. The first time he put eyes on that little girl, he dropped on his knees and said, "Lord, if she's following me, I need to follow you."
In 1999, at the age of 20, Brent and Jennifer married. He decided to leave his partying behind and pursue his true calling.
He went to school to become a preacher.
He got in church, changed his life around.
He told me when he was at church doing what he felt like he was called to do, he felt at peace.
Over the next several years, Brent and Jennifer welcomed 2 more children.
He would work construction or whatever music gigs that was playing in town that would pay him, but he always provided for his family.
Him and Jennifer, you'd think they'd be, inseparable for the rest of their lives. But the devil has his ways of coming in and changing things like that.
As much as Brent tried to focus on faith and family, the lure of the local nightlife proved too strong for him to ignore.
Him and Jennifer at the time was having some issues where her trying to keep him straight and him staying out late just pretty much took a toll.
At 30, after a decade of marriage, Brent and Jennifer divorced. Brent fully embraced his new bachelor status.
When they split up, Brent, he went out, started partying. He just left her everything and went back to a wild side.
He also reconnected with a childhood friend named Angelita Wright.
She literally lived right beside us, and she'd go to church with all of us. She's always had a crush on Brent all the way growing up. Angelita Wright was like those small-town girls who would never leave home. It was easy for her to fit into that lifestyle with Brent and become inseparable, because if there was a party, if there was a gig, she was there and supportive of him.
I honestly thought they'll run the roads for a little while and then he'll go back home, but within a year or 2, they was married.
Angelita and Brent had 3 more children together, but after 5 years of marriage, they decided to separate.
To be honest with you, he tried his best to straighten up, but she wouldn't calm down.
Despite the separation, they were able to co-parent and be there for their children that they had together.
By 2015, Brent was a 36-year-old divorced father of 6 with a second divorce from Angelita in the works. He was still playing music, but he'd managed to find a balance between pursuing his dreams and being a provider.
He bought a house in Cowpens, and it was cute and really simple. So he took me and my little siblings there and told us that everything was going to be okay and that we'll have a life there.
He was doing good. He bought him a house. He got a full-time job at the concrete company. He was posting his music.
He's wrote a lot of songs. He was supposed to went to The Voice in February.
But any aspirations Brent had are now in jeopardy as he's rushed to the hospital in critical condition.
They try to perform some life-saving measures on him, but ultimately he does end up dying around 3 o'clock in the morning.
They determined that with his injuries, the internal bleeding to his organs, that it was consistent with him being hit and run over.
And at that point, it was considered a potential homicide.
Investigators contact Brent's next of kin to deliver the tragic news and try to get some answers.
The investigators called Angelita Wright and asked if Angelita was related to Brent Tesnier. Angelita states that yes, that she's related to him, that she's his wife, and asks, oh my gosh, is he okay? The investigator comes out and states that Brent had been killed. She just loses it. Extremely upset.
Angelita said she had not seen him that entire day.
It leaves investigators with no suspects and very little to determine whether this was an accident or intentional.
No leads, no evidence, just a body, and now trying to piece together what really happened.
Coming up, a tip jumpstarts the investigation.
They show up at the house with a pipe or some kind of blunt force object, and they're looking for Brent.
And detectives uncover a powerful motive.
It was revenge porn. I mean, that's what it is.
In the early morning hours of December 27, 2015, news of Brent Tesnier's death spreads among his family and friends in Cowpens, South Carolina.
I woke up to a text message. In capital letters, it said, Brent's dead. So I just, there's no way. I just talked to him the night before. And it was just like a feeling that I'll never forget.
He's gone. My body went numb. I went blank.
The following day, detectives receive a tip that provides their first clear lead in the case.
911 receives a call from a friend of Brent's.
He believes the hit and run was the result of a feud with two men known as the Evans brothers. He suggests police get in touch with Brent's brother, Lucas Tesnier, for more information.
Lucas gives a statement that the day before, maybe December 25th, the Evans brothers show up at the house with a pipe or some kind of blunt force object, and they're looking for Brent. The Evans brothers thought that Brent had stolen their cell phone, and they clearly wanted it back. They were upset.
Brent, he would go down there and they would hang out and play music, and then the cell phone supposedly got missing. The lady that Brent supposedly stole the cell phone from is now married to an Evans.
Brent wasn't home, but Lucas says the Evans brothers continued to bang on the doors and windows.
There was an altercation there where they had tried to break in.
Lucas has to kind of calm the situation down, and they kind of come at him very aggressively. And at that point, Lucas goes back inside the house to get something to fend them off.
By the time he comes out, the individuals are in a car storming off, and that car is a larger SUV.
At this point, we have Brent with some kind of blunt force injury, with someone in a SUV that is probably big enough to cause that damage, and most importantly, motive.
When detectives check Brent's criminal history, they discover he's been busted for burglary and assault in the past. While killing someone over a stolen cell phone seems extreme, there could be more to this tip than they initially thought. Before detectives can pursue the lead, they receive a call from one of Brent's neighbors.
She's seeing somebody attempt to break into Brent's home. Law enforcement responds, and who they find is Angelita Wright, Brent's wife, along with a friend of hers, Amy Paget.
Amy says that after learning that Brent was gone. Angelita wanted to go to Brent's home to retrieve some of her items, retrieve a cell phone, some potential Christmas gifts. Detectives say the investigation is active and that no one can enter the home at that time.
They're not going to allow her to go in there and potentially take something that could be of evidentiary value.
They started asking her a little bit about her relationship with Brent at that time, and that's when she tells them that she's separated from him.
She lets them know that, look, even though we're raising our kids together and we're amicable, we haven't seen each other in a while.
She says the Evans brothers, we're looking for them. They have some kind of beef.
She says if anyone could have done or would have done anything to Brent, it would be them, because she knew the history and the animosity that was between them. This is the second confirmation of this confrontation between the Evans brothers and Brent. So now police have to go figure out where they were and what they were doing at the time of Brent's death.
In a town as small as Cowpens, the Evans brothers aren't hard to find. Detectives stop by their house to see what they have to say about the alleged feud.
Police see that champagne-colored SUV that was mentioned, and they don't see any damage on their SUV. The Evans brothers were forthcoming with information about their feud with Brent. They let police know that they were looking for him and that they were trying to find this cell phone that they say was stolen.
The brothers claim they had no intention of killing Brent and were out of town when the hit and run took place.
It was reported that these two guys were at a funeral that was nowhere near where Brent died.
Being able to quickly confirm that they did have an alibi for the night of the 26th and the morning of the 27th, they were able to clear them.
At this point, law enforcement needed to find a new direction for this investigation to go.
In hopes of getting answers, Brent's family turns to the local media for help.
Angelita met a crew from our station at the scene of where Brent died with some of his family members.
It was an innocent man's life that got taken. Whether it be a hit and run or whether somebody hurt him, answers still need to be served.
I was there, and we all kind of just stood together, but she did all the talking. And I was like, something's off about her.
She didn't have many tears. She was dry.
She's standing right there where her husband and where the father of her kids had just been run over, showing no emotion. Her demeanor didn't really match up with, the emotions that she should be having. It was pretty bizarre.
It's much different from the extreme emotion she'd shown when talking with police just hours earlier.
Angelita very much looked like she was hiding something.
Less than 48 hours after Brent Tesnier's death in a potential hit-and-run murder, local news covers the family's pleas for help. Brent's neighbor Sherry sees the broadcast and immediately picks up the phone.
Sherry was familiar with Brent and with Angelita since she lived close by and knew them well.
Sherry lets police know that Angelita does have a reason to be mad at Brent, and she was mad enough to potentially have done this.
Angelita had provided information to law enforcement that she and Brent were still amicable with one another. What law enforcement starts to find out is that is the exact opposite.
Both of them had their problems, and their marriage was very volatile.
According to Sherry, arguments between the couple had been escalating into acts of revenge, and Brent had stepped over the line.
Sherry tells police that she went to the house on the 26th to borrow something from Brent, and he shows her that he had posted some explicit pictures of a woman, and he had tagged Angelita in those pictures on Facebook.
Whether they were Angelita or not, he was trying to insinuate that it was her or send some kind of message to her.
It was revenge porn. I mean, that's what it is.
Not only did Sherry see that Facebook post itself, Brent shows Sherry several text messages that Angelita had sent him after that post was made. Angelita is telling Brent, you better take this down, take it down now, or I'm gonna come over to Cowpens and I'm gonna kill you. Sherry didn't really ever see Angelita as being a super violent person, but with the information that she had, she decided she needed to at least provide law enforcement with the information.
After Brent's family has had time to grieve, investigators turn to them for more insight on the dynamics between Brent and Angelita.
We learned that Angelita's background was kind of tumultuous.
Her mom was murdered, and then her dad went to prison. So she was raised by her grandparents. They tried to give her the best life that they could.
She kind of fell into some of those same substance abuse issues that Brent had.
When Brent came back into Angelita's life, their shared experiences made the bond between them stronger.
She was his shoulder to cry on, and he leaned on her for support.
They were both partiers, and I think there became a point in time in Brent's life when he really wanted to better himself for his kids.
Brent's family says that was the beginning of the end for the relationship.
He'd started making steps and trying to get his life together.
He gave her a choice. He told her, look, I bought us a house. Let's get away from everybody and let's raise our kids. And then she would not stop guardian. So he was like, I'll do it by myself. He was fighting for custody of the kids because she might pop in, take a picture, oh, I love you guys, and then back out the door she went. And it might be a week or two before you seen her again. So he was like, I'm not gonna let my kids grow up like this.
She was mad. She was very furious because Brent told her it was over. His done filed for divorce. She said that wasn't gonna happen. She threatened him several times, and he just brushed it off.
The family informs detectives that Brent's Facebook post only made things worse.
So the night before Brent was killed, she pulls up and she was like, get in touch with Brent. He posted pictures of me on Facebook and I want him to take them down right now. And I was like, well, maybe you need to go home and cool off.
It was the polar opposite of what they'd heard from Angelita.
Not only are they having to look at the lies that Angelita's providing them, they're also provided with this sort of motive with that Facebook post.
Detectives do believe that revenge porn is a powerful motive, but they're trying to piece together the facts because Angelita doesn't have a car. So who could have helped her?
Detectives don't have to look very far for a potential co-conspirator. Word on the street quickly provides them a name: Brandon Blackwood.
Brandon, too, was from this small town, grew up there, grew up with his grandparents, had a grandparent that was in law enforcement, and it was a pretty big deal, so people knew who he was.
Multiple witnesses report seeing Angelita with Brandon on the night of Brent's death.
The way that they're getting around is in Brandon Blackwood's white truck.
When they go to Brandon's grandparents' house to locate Brandon and kind of talk to him about what happened that day, his white truck's in front of the house. And law enforcement arriving, take the opportunity to do a little loop around that truck and see if there's any damage or anything.
What they see is some front bumper damage. They see a smear on the front bumper that looks like it could be blood. And they also see what ultimately looks as some hair wrapped around a bolt at the front of the car. They start to think that this vehicle is actually the murder weapon.
Coming up, an eyewitness gives a harrowing confession.
He says she turns on the brights, realizes that it's Brent Tesnier, and she floors it.
But is he telling the truth?
When I get intensely pressured, I say whatever I need to say.
2 days into the investigation of Brent Tesnier's murder, investigators impound Brandon Blackwood's truck and send blood samples for testing.
Now, police have a lot of things that they can question Brandon about. Who was driving the truck? Why is this damage here? Did you hit Brent? He goes down to the Spartanburg Sheriff's Office to give them a statement.
Detectives start by having Brandon tell them how he came to be involved with Brent's wife, Angelita.
There was quite an age difference between them. I think she was 27, 28, and I think he was 19 or 20.
Brandon describes his relationship with Angelita as just being friends, that they hang out together, that they occasionally party together.
When asked about the night of Brent's murder, Brandon confirms that he and Angelita were together.
He basically describes him and Angelita drinking all day and possibly doing some drugs.
They make a stop to see one of their friends, and that's when Carol shows them the post that was on Brent's Facebook page. And of course, she tells them that she's angry that these explicit pictures are online.
Angelita starts making statements like, "I'm gonna kill him. He doesn't deserve the air he breathes."
He says they end up going to several other houses where, the anger towards Brent continues. They continue to drink. She starts telling people how she's going to go over there to cow pens and, set them straight.
During the course of this, while they're driving around, going to places, Brandon's continually drinking. He's been drinking all day.
At this point, Brandon says to police that Angelita takes over driving.
Brandon says his memory after that becomes hazy, but he recalls a late-night stop at a local gas station.
Brandon says that Angelita gets out the car because Brent's there and they start getting into this fight, this altercation. Brandon says it lasts about 15 minutes, but again, he says he's so drunk that he's just kind of fading in and out the entire time.
Angelita gets back into the car, slams the car angrily, and she peels out of the parking lot, going down these back roads of cow pens. It's dark, it's middle of the night. Brandon still says he's hazy, but he remembers seeing a person in front of the vehicle.
He tells her to be careful, that someone's walking, and she turns on the brights, realizes that it's Brent Tesnier, and she floors it. She runs him over. Brandon starts to freak out, tells her to go back, and she goes, "Don't worry, he'll be fine," and she drives off.
He was asked, why didn't you come forward? Why didn't you tell us what happened that night? He expressed that he was concerned because his truck was the truck that was used, that, he was going to get in trouble for this.
Brandon's account matches the evidence found on his truck and at the scene. But when investigators confront Angelita, her account is different.
She's brought in, she's not under arrest at this point. She's asked to kind of tell us what happened that day.
She does admit to going to other people's houses and to making those statements about being angry at him for that Facebook post, but she makes it sound like she's saying all of it in jest.
She did see those explicit pictures, but this was still the father of her kids, and that she would never wish him harm or death. And she denies that she played a role in his death.
Angelita claims Brandon dropped her off at a friend's house around 1 a.m. and continued partying without her.
When Angelita's kind of recounting that night with law enforcement, she's pretty emphatic, and she tells them, "I was not in that car during the time that Brent was killed." But that's the interesting part. Nobody in the family knew at that point in time what time Brent was killed.
My question to her was, if you were not there, then how did you know when his time of death was? She could not answer that.
The reason she knows it is because she's in the car and she's the one that ran him over.
Detectives keep Angelita in custody while they look for physical evidence to link her to the hit and run.
Brandon's white truck has been taken into custody by law enforcement to kind of do a review of what's inside of it.
What they find is in the center console is Brandon Blackwood's wallet with his ID. And then in the pocket of the driver's side door is Angelita Wright's driver's license.
Finding her driver's license in a door side pocket would raise some serious questions. It's not her vehicle. If she has never been on the driver's side of that truck, how would it end up in that pocket?
On December 31st, 2015, 4 days after Brent Tesnier's death, Cowpens police arrest Angelita Wright for his murder.
After Angelita's arrested, she and Brent's 3 young kids go and live with her grandmother.
They decide not to charge the other person in the car, Brandon Blackwood, with any crime.
Brandon's just a witness in this case. He doesn't appear to have been acting in concert with Angelita and running over Brent Tesnier.
The prosecutors are able to set a court date, but police are still collecting evidence.
Unfortunately, DNA results from the hair and blood samples collected from the grill of the truck proved to be inconclusive.
What we learned from the forensic analysis of the truck is that really nothing existed. That spot that they thought was blood ended up not being blood. They weren't able to make a match on the hair around the bolt on the front of the car.
There was all kinds of reasons why that blood or that DNA may not come back as a match. Rain, weather, it's on the outdoor of a truck. All these things can affect the sample.
Without direct evidence, the case hinges on Brandon's testimony, and prosecutors know the defense will present him as an unreliable witness.
He was drunk that night, admittedly drunk, so there's going to be a few things that you have to take into account.
The solicitor's office brings in Brandon to help prepare him for trial. Extremely common. What they typically do is run through their questions with him, and then they also try to prepare him for cross-examination. They start to realize that he looks extremely nervous, that he looks fidgety, that he's being pretty evasive. They start to really poke and prod him. Is there a specific reason why you don't want to answer these questions? Is it because maybe you were more involved? Then they start to really interrogate him.
Instead of his testimony becoming stronger, it changes and potentially blows up their entire case.
Brandon now says that he's driving the car. Angelita keeps telling him, run him over, do it, he's right over there. And he ultimately does.
Authorities have no choice but to arrest Brandon while they attempt to sort through his varying statements.
Why is his story different now? Days before the trial, they are now scrambling to figure out, does this really change the entire trajectory of charging Angelita with the murder?
At this point, her trial is put on hold because the whole case needs to be reassessed.
Less than a week after Brandon's confession, authorities conduct a follow-up interview. Once again, he changes his story, claiming he was mentally impaired during the trial preparation.
What we find out from Brandon is that he had smoked some weed beforehand because he was extremely nervous about meeting with law enforcement officers.
He started giving them answers that he thought they were looking for, rather than what actually happened.
When I get intensely pressured, I break down.
Okay.
And when I break down, I get to a point where I say whatever I need to say to get them to leave me alone.
Brandon says his original statement was correct. Angelita was the one behind the wheel that night.
Let's get this straight. What you're telling me now, here,
sir,
is that she's the one who drove the truck over Brent, basically.
Yes, sir.
To prove he's telling the truth, Brandon submits to a polygraph.
Regarding who killed Brent, do you intend to answer truthfully every question about that?
But the polygraph determined that he was lying. It detected deception. But when he says that Angelita was in the car, it says that he was telling the truth. So it doesn't really bring much clarity to the situation other than that they were both in the car.
This is the thing with polygraphs. I know people who can pass a polygraph, lying their butt off. But I know people that can't pass a polygraph to save their life. They're telling the truth. And that's exactly why they're not admissible in court.
Despite the vagueness of the test result, prosecutors are inclined to believe Brandon.
From the overview of all of the evidence, not just looking at this one statement, Angelita's driver's license and the driver's side door obviously was very important to show that she was on the driver's side of that car that night.
False confessions happen all the time. Brandon said what he thought people wanted to hear at that moment. For us, it ultimately ended up being, that Angelita was the person that we felt was responsible for Brent's death.
Prosecutors have enough to go to trial. They have the question of, will it land her in jail?
The decision to use Brandon as a witness in this trial was a risk because this guy at one point in time said he was the driver. How is that not reasonable doubt?
On November 27, 2017, Angelita Wright's trial for the murder of her estranged husband Brent Tesnier begins in South Carolina. Prosecutors tell the jury Angelita's anger over their pending divorce and the explicit photos Brent posted online boiled over into rage when she saw him walking down the side of the road the night of the homicide.
It was really kind of two trials in one for us to show Angelita did it and Brandon didn't do it. It was a risk, it was a liability, but we knew it was something we couldn't hide throughout the case. We knew it was going to come out, so we embraced it and kind of hit it, head on.
Despite the unreliability of Brandon's testimony, the prosecution decides to put him on the stand.
He testified about everything that happened that night, including Angelita driving and running over Brent.
He puts her behind the wheel. So a very important statement for us.
They paint a picture for the jury of Angelita as a woman scorned.
She figured out Brent was done. He was fighting for the kids. She didn't want that. He was filing for a divorce. She didn't want that. She wanted Brent to continue to be with her, but live her lifestyle, and he wasn't going to do it anymore.
Prosecutors argue that when her husband posted nude photos of her, Angelita's anger and resentment finally boiled over.
It was a progression that day. She was running around drinking alcohol with Brandon. She progressively kept getting angrier and angrier. I think eventually the alcohol and what he had done that day drove her to run him over with the truck.
She snapped because she couldn't control the situation. Those pictures were not going anywhere, and she was going to be the laughingstock of Cowpens.
He didn't want to be with her, so she fixed it. We couldn't be with nobody.
As further evidence, the prosecution submits Angelita's text messages following Brent's death.
Angelita sent a message to Brandon Blackwood less than 24 hours after Brent had been run over. And in that message, she sent Brandon something along the lines of, "Feel like walking to the store, LOL."
The only reason that text would be sent was as a inside joke between those two of, hey, Brent was walking to the store and we ran him over with the truck. The text makes no sense with any text before it. It makes no sense with any text after it. She was almost celebrating what they did and laughing about it.
As expected, Angelita's attorneys spend most of their efforts trying to discredit the prosecution's star witness.
The defense did a pretty good job of trying to paint Brandon as somebody that would kind of say whatever he wanted to get out of trouble. They highlighted his changing statements multiple times. And if you don't know who to believe, then that's reasonable doubt.
On November 30th, 2017, the jury delivers its verdict.
Angelita was found guilty of murder and was sentenced to 30 years.
The only remorse she showed was for herself, that she was going to have to spend the time in prison. She showed no remorse for the fact that Brent was dead.
She should have got more, because she took somebody close to us away. We can't get him back. Once I lost him, I lost myself, I lost the world, I lost everything.
When I first found out my mom was going to jail, it brought me to, because I didn't just lose one parent, I lost two. I know people must think I hate her, but I don't. That might be hard to hear for some people. My family, I understand why they hate her. She took something away from them that they loved dearly, and from her kids too. But at the same time, she did give me life, so I still love her, but from a distance.
A lot of people looked up to Brent and his talent and who he was as a person. No matter what, he'll always be my hero. He chose the wrong path in life sometimes, but he was always my go-to when I needed somebody. He was always there for me. Life's definitely not the same without him.
Texas 2003 cold case solved. Forgotten evidence leads to shocking arrest. The file should have stayed buried. It sat in silence for nearly 20 years, pressed between dozens of others in a steel cabinet that no one opened unless they had to. The label was fading, the ink bleeding into the paper like it was trying to disappear on its own. Case number RH 03-117. No photograph on the front. No red markings. Just a name typed in plain black letters. Emily Carter. In Red Hollow, Texas, people stopped saying that name out loud a long time ago. Not because they forgot, because they didn't want to remember. The town was the kind of place where nothing ever really happened. One main road, 2 gas stations, a diner that closed before midnight, and houses spaced far enough apart that you could go hours without seeing another person. It was quiet in a way that felt permanent. Predictable. Safe. Until the night it wasn't. October 17th, 2003 began like any other day. Dry heat hanging in the air, the kind that clung to your skin even after the sun went down. Emily Carter left school at 4:12 p.m., waving to a group of students lingering by the gate. She had stayed late, as usual. Papers to grade. A parent meeting that ran longer than expected. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would stand out later. At 6:03 p.m., she stopped at a local grocery store. Security footage captured her walking through the aisles, picking up milk, bread, a frozen dinner. She smiled at the cashier, paid in cash, left without looking back. At 7:26 p.m., her car pulled into the driveway of her small house on Briarwood Lane. A single-story structure, pale yellow paint starting to peel, a porch light that flickered if you didn't hit the switch just right. The kind of house that looked ordinary enough to fade into the background. At 9:12 p.m., she made a phone call. 37 seconds. No recording. No transcript. Just a log entry from a landline provider confirming the duration and destination. A payphone off Highway 16. 10 miles away. Isolated. Rarely used. At 9:49 p.m., a neighbor, Thomas Hale, reported hearing a sound. He would later describe it as sharp. Maybe a door. Maybe something heavier. He didn't step outside. Didn't check. In Red Hollow, people learned not to question every noise the night carried. At 10:03 p.m., Emily Carter vanished. No scream, no struggle, no sign that anything had gone wrong, just absence. The next morning, when she didn't show up for work, the school called her house. No answer. By noon, concern turned into action. A welfare check was requested. Sheriff Daniel Reeves arrived at 1:17 p.m. He would later say the house felt wrong the moment he stepped inside. Not chaotic, not disturbed, too normal. The kitchen light was still on. A glass of water sat on the counter, half full. Her purse was hanging by the door. Keys inside. Wallet untouched. The frozen dinner still in the freezer. Everything exactly where it should have been. Except Emily. The search began immediately. Volunteers from across the county poured in. Fields were combed. Drainage ditches inspected. Abandoned barns forced open. Dogs brought into track scent trails that ended abruptly at the edge of her driveway. No footprints leading away. No tire tracks that didn't belong. It was as if she had stepped out of existence. The headlines escalated quickly. Missing teacher shocks quiet Texas town. No signs of struggle in baffling disappearance. Cold case fears as investigation stalls. But in the beginning, it wasn't cold. It was urgent. Reeves worked the case like a man trying to outrun time. Interviews stacked on top of each other. Friends, co-workers, former students, anyone who had spoken to Emily in the days leading up to her disappearance. They all said the same thing. She was normal. No enemies. No recent arguments. No signs of distress. No secret relationships. No indication that she was planning to leave. Until the call. That 37-second call became the center of everything. Why a payphone? Why 10 miles away? Why so short? Investigators traced it, but the location offered nothing. No cameras. No witnesses. The surrounding area was little more than scrubland and a stretch of empty road. The kind of place you pass through without noticing. Still, it was something. More than anything else they had. Days turned into weeks. The search radius expanded. Posters went up. Tips came in, most of them useless, some of them cruel. Sightings that led nowhere. Claims that collapsed under the slightest scrutiny. And then, slowly, the case began to slip. Leads dried up. The urgency faded. The town adjusted. But Reeves didn't. He kept digging long after others had moved on. He revisited the house. Re-examined the evidence. Looked for patterns where none existed. Because something about it refused to settle. People don't just disappear. Not like that. Not without leaving something behind. And yet, the case file remained thin. A partial fingerprint on the kitchen counter, too smudged to identify. A footprint behind the house, eroded before it could be cast. A witness statement about a vehicle seen near Briarwood Lane that night. Never confirmed, never traced. Pieces that didn't fit together. Pieces that didn't fit at all. By early 2004, the label changed. Active investigation became cold case. The file was archived. The cabinet closed. The town exhaled, even if no one admitted it out loud. Years passed. Red Hollow kept moving. New paint on old buildings. New families replacing old ones. The diner changed owners. The school replaced staff. Time layered itself over the memory until it felt distant, almost unreal. Emily Carter became a story. A warning. A ghost without a body. And then, 20 years later, the file was opened again. Not because of a break. Because of a mistake. An evidence audit triggered by a system upgrade forced the department to revisit old storage boxes, items that had never been digitized, never properly logged. It was routine, boring, administrative, until Detective Laura Mendez found the box that didn't match its label. Inside were documents from multiple cases misfiled and disorganized, reports that belonged elsewhere, photographs with no reference numbers, and one sealed evidence bag. No label, no entry in the system, no explanation, just a cassette tape. Outdated, obsolete, forgotten. Mendez turned it over in her hands, studying it like it might explain itself if she waited long enough. It didn't. There was no record of it ever being collected. No mention in the original case file, which meant one of two things. It had been missed, or it had been hidden. She didn't log it immediately. Not yet. Something about it felt wrong, out of place in a way that didn't align with a simple clerical error. Instead, she found a player. It took effort. The department didn't keep equipment like that anymore. She had to source one from outside, test it, clean it, make sure it wouldn't destroy the tape the moment it started turning. When she finally pressed play, the room felt smaller. The first few seconds were static. Low, uneven, like distant interference. Then a sound. Breathing. Soft. Controlled. Close to the microphone. A woman's voice followed. I didn't tell anyone. Mendez froze. She had studied Emily Carter's records long enough to recognize the cadence, the tone, the slight hesitation between words. It was her. Alive. On that tape. A pause stretched longer than it should have. Then the voice again. You said it would be over. And then, another voice. Male. Lower. Steady. Emotionless. It is. The tape cut off. No click. No transition. Just silence. 31 seconds. That was all. 31 seconds that rewrote everything. Because Emily Carter hadn't vanished into nothing. She had been with someone. Someone who spoke calmly. Someone who wasn't afraid. Someone who believed it was already finished. Mendez replayed it. Again. And again. Each time listening for something new. Something hidden beneath the surface. And eventually she found it. A sound behind the voices. Faint at first. Easy to miss. A pattern. Metal. Striking metal. Slow. Rhythmic. Consistent. Not random. Not environmental noise. Something physical. Something real. She isolated it, enhanced it, stripped away the static until the sound stood alone. Clang. Pause. Clang. Pause. Like a loose chain shifting. Or a hook tapping against steel. The kind of sound that comes from a place. A specific place. And suddenly, the case wasn't just about who had been there. It was about where they had been standing when that tape was recorded. Mendez leaned back, eyes fixed on the waveform glowing on her screen. Because if that sound could be identified, if that location could be found, then Emily Carter wasn't just a missing person anymore. She was evidence. And someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make sure that evidence stayed buried. Which meant the truth hadn't disappeared. It had been hidden. And the person who hid it might still be out there. Still living. Still watching. Still believing that no one would ever open that file again. But they were wrong. Because now, after 20 years of silence, the case wasn't cold anymore. It was waking up. And this time, it wasn't going to stop. The sound shouldn't have mattered. Not at first. Most investigators would have dismissed it as background noise, the kind of distortion that comes from cheap recording equipment, from interference, from time itself degrading the signal. But Laura Mendez didn't hear noise. She heard pattern. Clang. Pause. Clang. Too consistent to be accidental. Too clean to be random. She isolated the frequency, stripped everything else away until the voices were gone, and only the metallic rhythm remained. It echoed in the lab, hollow and cold, like it belonged to a space larger than the room she was sitting in. Somewhere enclosed. Somewhere hard. Somewhere that hadn't changed in 20 years. Because metal like that doesn't disappear. It stays. The first thing she did was map it. Not geographically, not yet, but acoustically. She compared it to industrial databases, archived sound libraries, anything that could match the tone, the resonance, the spacing between impacts. Dozens of possibilities came back. Pipes. Chains. Loose fixtures in old machinery. Suspended hooks. Each one narrowing the field. Each one suggesting the same thing. This wasn't a house. It wasn't a roadside. It was a structure. And not just any structure. One with metal infrastructure, exposed, aged, and unused enough that something could swing freely without interruption. An abandoned site. Red Hollow had plenty of those. Old oil storage units. Defunct processing sheds. barns left to collapse under their own weight, places that had once been busy, loud, alive with purpose, now silent, forgotten, perfect for something to happen without being seen. Mendez printed out a list. 32 locations within a 15-mile radius that fit the profile. 32 places where that sound could exist. Too many. But it was a start. She didn't file the tape yet. Not officially. Because the moment she did, it would enter the system. It would be seen, reviewed, assigned, controlled. And if someone had hidden it once, there was no guarantee they wouldn't try again. So she worked quietly, off record, at least for now. The next step was the original investigation. She pulled every report tied to the case, not just the main file but the peripheral documents, the ones people rarely read twice. Supplemental notes, field logs, dispatch transcripts, anything that might reference a location, a sound, a detail that had been overlooked. Hours turned into night, night into early morning. Patterns started to form. Not obvious ones. Subtle inconsistencies. Small gaps where something should have been. A search team assigned to Grid Sector 12 reporting no findings, despite a later note indicating unidentified structure present. No follow-up. No photographs. A witness claiming to hear metal banging near an old storage facility 2 nights after Emily disappeared, statement marked as unreliable due to intoxication. A deputy's field note referencing possible secondary site, crossed out with no explanation. And then, a name. Deputy Mark Harlan. It appeared too often. Not in bold. Not in anything that screamed importance. Just present. He logged the initial entry into Emily's home. He assisted with evidence collection. He participated in multiple search sweeps. He filed at least 3 independent reports, all of them clean, all of them routine. Too routine. Mendez stared at the documents spread across her desk. Because when you look at something long enough, you start to notice what isn't there. And in Harlan's reports, something was missing. Details. They were efficient, concise, almost clinical. But real field notes aren't like that. They're messy, observational, filled with small things that don't seem important until later. Harlan's notes had none of that. Just conclusions. No process. No uncertainty. As if he already knew what mattered and what didn't. Mendez leaned back, the sound of the tape still looping in her mind.
Clang. Pause. Clang.
She cross-referenced the list of abandoned sites with patrol assignments from 2003. Who had access? Who had reason to be there? Who would know which locations were empty and which ones weren't? Harlan's name surfaced again. Assigned to a patrol route that included 3 of the 32 sites. One of them stood out immediately. Blackridge Storage Facility. Closed in 1998 after a structural failure. Never demolished. Too expensive to tear down. Too unstable to repurpose. It sat 5 miles off Highway 16, down a gravel road that most people didn't even realize existed. And it had something else. Documented reports of loose metal fixtures inside the main structure.
Chains.
Hooks. Industrial equipment left hanging when the site was abandoned. Mendez felt it then.
Not certainty.
But alignment. The kind that pulls everything into focus just enough to make you uncomfortable. She checked the original case file again. Blackridge had been searched.
Once.
Day 3 of the investigation. The report was brief. Structure cleared. No evidence located. Signed by Deputy Mark Harlan. No photos attached. No secondary verification. Just cleared. Mendez stared at the signature. Because if the tape had been recorded there, if Emily Carter had been there, then that search hadn't missed something. It had ignored it. She printed the map, circled Blackridge, and folded it into her jacket pocket. By the time the sun came up, she was already driving. The road to Blackridge wasn't marked. Just a break in the brush, barely visible unless you knew where to look. Gravel crunched under her tires as she turned in, the path narrowing the further she went. No houses. No traffic. Just open land and silence. The facility appeared slowly, rising out of the horizon like something left behind on purpose. Rusted metal siding, collapsed sections of roof, windows shattered long ago, leaving dark openings that swallowed light instead of reflecting it. It didn't look abandoned. It looked forgotten. Mendez parked 100 yards out.
She didn't call it in.
Not yet. The air felt heavier as she stepped out of the car, the heat already building despite the early hour. Wind moved through the structure, slipping through broken panels, creating low, hollow sounds that echoed across the empty space. For a moment, she just stood there, listening. Nothing. Just wind. But wind changes. Metal doesn't. She moved closer, boots crunching against gravel and debris, each step measured, controlled. The entrance to the main building hung open, the door long gone. Inside, shadows stretched across the floor, broken beams casting uneven patterns that shifted as the light changed. The smell hit first.
Dust. Rischt.
Something older. She stepped inside. The temperature dropped immediately, the thick walls holding onto the night's coolness. Her eyes adjusted slowly, shapes forming out of darkness, machinery, supports, remnants of something that once had purpose. And then she heard it.
Soft. Faint.
But unmistakable.
Clang. She froze.
The sound came again.
Clang. Pause. Clang.
Her chest tightened, because it was the same. Not similar. Not close. The same rhythm. The same tone. Somewhere deeper inside the structure, something was moving. Not actively. Not deliberately. Just enough. Just enough to make that sound. Mendez moved toward it, every step slower than the last, the sound guiding her through the maze of rusted metal and broken flooring. The further she went, the clearer it became.
A chain.
Suspended from a beam overhead, swaying slightly in the air. At the end of it, a hook. Heavy.
Worn.
Tapping against a steel support with every movement.
Clang. Pause. Clang.
Mendez stopped a few feet away, staring at it. Because this wasn't just a match. It was exact. She pulled out her recorder, played the tape, and let the sound fill the space. The two rhythms overlapped. Aligned perfectly. Same pitch. Same interval. Same echo. This was it. This was where the tape had been recorded, which meant Emily Carter had been here. In this building. In this exact space. 20 years ago. Mendez turned slowly, scanning the floor, the walls, the beams above her, looking for anything that didn't belong, anything that had been missed, anything that had been left behind. Because places like this don't erase what happens inside them. They absorb it, they hold it, and sometimes they give it back. Her flashlight cut across the ground, illuminating layers of dust that had settled undisturbed for years. Except, not all of it. There were marks.
Faint.
Almost invisible.
But there.
A disturbance in the dust near the base of the beam. Mendez crouched down, brushing lightly across the surface. Something had been moved. Recently. Not 20 years ago. Not during the original search. Recently. Her pulse spiked. Because that meant one thing. This place hadn't just been used in 2003. It had been visited. Maintained.
Watched.
She stood slowly, the silence pressing in around her. Because if someone had come back here, if someone had kept this place from being completely forgotten, then the case wasn't just waking up. It had never been asleep. And whoever had hidden the truth all those years ago might already know she was here. The dust doesn't lie. It settles slowly, evenly, without bias, without memory, until something disturbs it. And when it does, it leaves behind a record more honest than any witness statement, more precise than any report. Mendez crouched lower, her flashlight beam tightening into a sharp circle over the ground. The disturbance wasn't large, not dramatic, just a subtle shift in texture, a break in the uniform layer that had been sitting untouched for years. Except it hadn't been untouched. Not here. Not recently. She traced the edge of it with her eyes, careful not to step closer, careful not to destroy what little remained. The pattern wasn't random. It curved slightly, like something had been dragged or repositioned. Something heavy. Her gaze lifted slowly, back to the chain, still swaying.
Clang. Pause. Clang.
The sound felt louder now, not because it had changed, but because she understood it. This wasn't just a place where something had happened. It was a place someone had come back to. Again.
And again.
The realization settled in her chest like weight. Because people don't revisit places like this without reason. Not unless there's something here worth protecting. Or something they can't let go. Mendez stood up, scanning the structure again, this time with a different lens. Not as an abandoned building, but as a scene still in motion, still connected to the present. Her flashlight swept across the beams, the floor, the corners where debris had gathered into undisturbed piles. Until it stopped. Near the far wall. A section of concrete that didn't match the rest. At first glance, it looked the same, cracked, worn, aged like everything else. But the edges were cleaner. The coloration slightly different. Subtle, but enough. Enough to stand out if you were looking. Mendez moved toward it slowly, every step deliberate. The closer she got, the clearer it became. This wasn't original. It had been poured later. Not recently, but not 20 years ago either.
A patch.
Roughly 6 feet by 4. Just large enough to cover something. Her pulse climbed. Because now the pieces were starting to align in a way that felt too direct to ignore.
The chain. The tape.
The location. The disturbance in the dust. And now, the floor. She knelt beside the edge, running her fingers just above the surface without touching it. The seam where old Met knew was visible if you knew how to look. Imperfect.
Rushed.
Not professional. Done by someone who didn't expect it to be examined closely. Done by someone who believed it would never need to be. Mendez exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Because this was no longer a possibility. It was a direction. And directions lead somewhere. She stood, reached for her phone. Then stopped. A sound.
Not the chain.
Something else. Behind her.
Soft. Brief.
But unmistakable. Footsteps. She turned sharply, flashlight snapping toward the entrance. Nothing. Just the doorway, framing the bright Texas morning beyond it.
Still.
Silent. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. Because she knew what she heard. And more importantly,
she knew what it meant.
Someone else was here. Or had been. Recently enough that the sound hadn't faded into imagination. Mendez didn't move for a few seconds. Didn't speak. Didn't call out. She listened. Every muscle tense. Every sense focused on the space around her. But the building gave nothing back. No movement. No voice. Just the slow, hollow echo of wind slipping through broken metal.
Clang. Pause. Clang.
The chain kept moving. Like nothing had changed. But everything had. Mendez backed away from the concrete patch, keeping her eyes on the entrance, her mind racing through possibilities. If someone had been here, if someone was watching, then this wasn't just a discovery. It was a signal. And signals don't go unnoticed. She stepped outside into the sunlight, the heat hitting her immediately, sharp and real. The open space felt different now, less empty, more exposed. Her car sat where she left it. No other vehicles. No obvious signs of anyone else. But that didn't mean she was alone. It just meant whoever was out there didn't want to be seen. Mendez got in the car, locked the doors, and finally made the call. Dispatch, this is Detective Mendez. I need a unit at my location, Blackridge Storage Facility. Possible active scene. And I want forensics on standby. Her voice was steady, controlled. But underneath it, something else was building. Because she knew what they were about to find. Or, at least, she knew what they might. And, if she was right, then Emily Carter had never left this place. The drive back felt longer than it should have. Not because of distance, but because of what came next. Once the scene was processed, once the concrete was broken, once whatever lay beneath it was brought into the light, there would be no going back. The case wouldn't just reopen. It would explode. And with it, everything tied to it. Every report. Every officer. Every decision made in 2003, especially the ones that didn't make sense, especially the ones that pointed to one man, Deputy Mark Harlan. By the time backup arrived, the sun was high enough to bleach the landscape into a harsh contrast. The facility looked smaller now, less imposing, but that didn't change what it held. Uniforms moved in. Perimeter established. Tapes stretched across the entrance. Forensics began setting up equipment. Mendez stood just outside the structure, arms crossed, watching as the process unfolded. Professional, methodical, but slower than she wanted, because every minute felt like a window, a chance for someone to react, to prepare, to run. She stepped aside, pulling out her phone again, not to call dispatch this time, but to access personnel records. Mark Harlan, still active, still on duty, scheduled for a shift that started in less than 2 hours. Mendez stared at the screen, because timing like that doesn't feel random. Not when everything else is starting to connect. Not when a hidden tape surfaces, a forgotten location reemerges, and the one person tied to both is still close enough to respond. Still close enough to see it happening in real time. She looked back at the building. At the entrance. At the place where 20 years of silence were about to be broken open. And she made a decision. She wasn't going to wait. Not for confirmation. Not for lab results. Because if Harlan was involved, if he had any connection to what happened here, then the moment he heard about Blackridge, everything would change. He would know. He would understand exactly what had been found. And he would act accordingly. Mendez turned to one of the deputies on scene. "Keep me updated," she said. "The moment you're ready to break that slab, I want to know." The deputy nodded, unaware of the weight behind the request. Mendez didn't explain.
Didn't need to.
She was already moving. Back to her car. Back onto the gravel road. Back toward Red Hollow. Because the past had just surfaced. And if she was right, the man who buried it was still out there. Still wearing a badge. Still walking free. And possibly already watching her get closer. The road back to Red Hollow felt different. Same asphalt. Same endless stretch of sunburnt land. Same silence pressing in from both sides. But now it carried something else. Urgency, sharp and rising, like the moment before a storm breaks. Mendez kept her eyes forward, one hand steady on the wheel, the other resting near her phone. Her mind wasn't on the road. It was on the timeline. On the way everything had started to move at once.
The tape.
The sound. The location. The concrete. And now, Mark Harlan. If he was involved, if even a fraction of what she suspected was true, then every second mattered. Because people like that don't wait to be caught. They prepare. They adapt. They disappear. The town appeared on the horizon, low and quiet, unchanged from the outside. A place where nothing seemed urgent, where time moved slower, where people still believed in routines. Mendez drove straight past the diner, past the gas station, past the school where Emily Carter had last been seen alive, and pulled into the gravel lot behind the sheriff's office. No lights flashing. No chaos. Just another day. She stepped out, moving fast but not running, controlling her pace, her breathing, her expression. Because walking into a station like this with suspicion already in your eyes, that's how you lose control of the situation before it even starts. Inside, it was exactly what you'd expect. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, low conversations blending into background noise. Normal. Too normal. Mendez scanned the room. Harlan wasn't there. Not yet. Her gaze shifted to the clock on the wall. 42 minutes until his shift. 42 minutes to decide how to approach this. Because once he walked through that door, everything would change. She headed straight for the records office, closing the door behind her, shutting out the noise. The quiet inside felt heavy, like the room itself understood what was coming. She pulled up Harlan's personnel file. Years of service.
Clean record.
Commendations for reliability, consistency, professionalism. No disciplinary actions. No complaints. Nothing that stood out. Which was exactly the problem. Because people don't stay invisible for that long without trying. She dug deeper. Shift logs.
patrol routes,
incident reports, cross-referencing dates, locations, assignments. And slowly, the pattern emerged. Not obvious. Not something anyone would notice unless they were looking for it. But it was there. Harlan had a habit, a preference for certain routes, certain areas, including Blackridge. Not frequently, not enough to draw attention, but consistently. Over years, even after the case went cold, even when there was no reason to be out there, Mendez leaned back, the weight of it settling in. Because this wasn't coincidence anymore. This was proximity, access, opportunity, and maybe control. A knock at the door broke the silence. Sharp, unexpected. Mendez closed the file quickly, minimizing the screen. Yeah. The door opened halfway. Deputy Collins. Young.
new.
The kind of officer who still believed everything worked the way it was supposed to. Detective, he said, hesitant. You asked to be notified when Deputy Harlan arrived. Mendez's pulse ticked up. Is he here? Collins nodded. Just walked in. That was it. No more time. No more preparation. Just the moment. Mendez stood, smoothing her jacket, forcing her expression into something neutral, controlled, professional, because the first move matters. And she wasn't ready to show her hand yet. Not completely. Thanks, she said, moving past him into the hallway. Every step toward the main floor felt heavier than the last. Not because of fear. Because of certainty. Because somewhere between that abandoned facility and this station, the case had stopped being theory. It had become real. Harlan stood near his desk, setting down his keys, talking to another deputy. He looked exactly like the file described. Mid-40s. Solid build. Calm posture. The kind of presence that blends into a room instead of dominating it. He laughed at something the other deputy said. Easy. Unforced. Normal. Mendez watched him for a moment longer than she should have. Because this was the man. The one whose name kept appearing. The one who had cleared Blackridge. The one who had access to everything. And the one who might have hidden the truth for 20 years. She stepped forward. Deputy Harlan. He turned. Eyes meeting hers for the first time. No hesitation. No flicker of recognition. Just a polite, neutral expression. Detective, he said. Didn't expect you in this early.
His voice. Steady.
Measured. Controlled. Mendez felt something shift internally. Because she had heard that tone before. Not the exact voice. But the same quality. The same calm. It is. She pushed the thought down.
Not now.
Got a minute? She asked. Harlan nodded without question. Sure. Too easy. He led her to a small interview room, standard procedure. Neutral ground. No distractions. They sat across from each other. Table between them. Silence stretching just long enough to matter. Mendez let it sit. Because silence has weight. And sometimes, people fill it without realizing. Harlan didn't. He waited. Patient. That alone told her something. I've been reviewing old cases, she said finally, keeping her tone even. Emily Carter. A pause. Not long.
But there.
I remember it, he said. Everyone does. Do you? Another pause. Slightly longer. Parts of it, he admitted. It's been a long time. Mendez nodded. Walk me through Blackridge. There it was.
Direct.
No build-up. No warning. Harlan's eyes didn't move. Didn't dart.
Didn't shift.
But something behind them tightened. Just for a second. Blackridge, he repeated. You logged the search, Mendez said. Day 3. Yeah, he said slowly. Standard sweep. Nothing there. Nothing. Nothing. The word landed flat. Too clean. Mendez leaned forward slightly. No secondary search. No follow-up. No photographs. It was cleared, Harlan said. Didn't see a reason.
Didn't see.
Not couldn't see.
Didn't see.
Choice of words matters. Any reason you would have missed something? She asked. Harlan shook his head.
No.
Immediate. Confident. Too confident. Mendez studied him. because this was the moment. The edge between suspicion and confirmation. You ever go back there? She asked.
A beat.
Then, no. Too fast. Too final. The kind of answer that closes a door instead of leaving it open. Mendez let the silence return. Longer this time. He shifted slightly in his chair. First movement since they sat down. Small.
But there.
You find something? He asked. There it was. The question. Not what.
Not why. Something.
He already knew. Or at least, he expected it. Mendez held his gaze. Measured the distance between what she knew and what she could prove. Because accusing too early would kill everything. But waiting too long could do the same. Maybe, she said. Harlan nodded slowly.
Processing.
Calculating. Want to tell me what this is about? He asked. His tone was still calm. But underneath it, something else had started to surface. Not fear. Not yet. But awareness. The kind that comes right before it. Mendez leaned back. Let the chair creak slightly. Deliberate. I think something was missed, she said. Harlan's jaw tightened. Just a fraction. Then we'll go back, he said. Take another look.
We. Not you.
Not the department.
We.
Positioning. Inclusion.
Control.
Mendez stood.
So we will, she said.
And for the first time, Harlan looked uncertain. Not openly. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But enough. Enough to confirm what she already felt building since the moment she heard that tape. Because something inside him had just shifted. Something small. Something fragile. But once it breaks, it doesn't go back. Mendez walked to the door, pausing just long enough to say one more thing. Scene's already active, she added. Harlan didn't respond immediately. And, in that silence, the calm started to crack. Just enough for the truth to start pushing through. The crack didn't make a sound. Not at first. It happened behind Harlan's eyes, in the space between composure and reaction, in that split second where control slips just enough to reveal what's underneath. Most people wouldn't notice it. Most people wouldn't be looking for it. Mendez was.
And she saw it.
He recovered quickly, too quickly, but not before something surfaced. Not fear. Not guilt. Something colder. Recognition. Not of the accusation. Of the situation. Like a man who had just realized the door he locked years ago was no longer closed. Mendez didn't wait for him to respond. She stepped out into the hallway, letting the door swing shut behind her with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. The station noise rushed back in, phones, voices, movement, but it all felt distant now, like it belonged to a different world. Because everything had shifted. Behind that door, Harlan knew. Not everything, but enough. And people like him don't sit still once they know. Mendez moved fast, heading straight for the front desk. Collins, she said, low but firm. I want eyes on Harlan. Discreet. If he leaves, I want to know immediately.
Collins blinked, surprised.
Is there? Just do it. The tone shut down the question. He nodded. Mendez turned, already dialing her phone. Forensics picked up on the second ring.
This is Mendez, she said.
Status. A pause. Background noise. Equipment. Voices. Then, we're set up. About to start breaking the slab. Her grip tightened on the phone. How long? 30 minutes. Maybe less. 30 minutes. That was all it would take to turn suspicion into evidence. Or nothing at all. Mendez exhaled slowly. I'm on my way, she said, hanging up before they could respond. She didn't look back as she left the station. Didn't check if Harlan followed. Didn't wait to see what he would do. Because the clock had already started. And if he was going to move, it would be now. The drive felt faster this time. Not because she pushed the speed, but because everything else fell away. No distractions. No second thoughts. Just the road and the weight of what was waiting at the end of it. Her mind replayed the interview. Every word. Every pause. Every shift in tone. You find something? Not what did you find? Not why are you asking? Something. He already knew there was something to find. Which meant he knew what was there. Or at least, what had been there. Mendez pressed harder on the gas. The gravel road to Blackridge came into view again, dust rising as she turned in. This time it wasn't empty. 2 patrol cars. 1 forensics van. Yellow tape stretching across the perimeter. Movement. Controlled. Focused. Active. She parked hard, stepping out before the engine fully died. The air felt heavier now, charged with anticipation. The kind that builds right before a discovery, when everyone knows something is coming, but no one knows exactly what it will be. Mendez moved through the perimeter, flashing her badge, stepping past deputies and technicians without slowing. Inside, the sound of machinery filled the space. Concrete saws, metal tools, voices echoing against rusted walls. And beneath it all, fainter now but still there,
Clang. Pause. Clang.
the chain hadn't stopped. It never stopped, like a metronome marking time, marking years, marking silence.
Until now.
Mendez approached the slab. Half of it had already been cut, the clean edges exposing darker material beneath. 2 technicians worked carefully, removing sections piece by piece, their movements precise, deliberate. Because once you open something like this, you don't get to close it again. Detective, one of them said, stepping back slightly. We're almost through. Mendez nodded, her eyes fixed on the opening. The air around it felt different.
Cooler. Heavier.
Like something sealed for too long was about to be exposed. Another section lifted. Set aside. The hole deepened. Darkness underneath. One of the technicians crouched down, shining a light inside. He didn't say anything at first. Just looked. Then, Jesus. The word echoed.
Soft.
Uncontrolled. Mendez stepped forward. Talk to me. The technician swallowed, shifting back to give her a clearer view. Detective, you're going to want to see this. She crouched beside the opening, taking the flashlight from his hand, angling it downward. The beam cut through the darkness and found fabric. Faded, decayed, but unmistakable.
Clothing. Human. Still.
Mendez's breath caught. Not because she didn't expect it, but because expectation doesn't prepare you for reality. She adjusted the light. More came into view.
Bone.
Partially exposed. Positioned in a way that told its own story. Compressed, constrained, forced into a space that was never meant to hold it. There was no doubt. No question. No ambiguity. Emily Carter had been here. The entire time. 20 years. Buried under concrete. Hidden in plain sight. Mendez stood slowly, the weight of it pressing down hard now. Because this wasn't just discovery. This was confirmation. Of everything. Of the tape. Of the location. Of the lie. She turned away slightly, pulling out her phone again. But before she could dial,
it rang.
Unknown number. Her pulse spiked. She answered. Mendez. Silence. Then, a voice.
Male. Low.
Familiar. You shouldn't have come out here. The words landed like a strike.
Cold.
Controlled. Exactly the same tone. It is. Mendez's grip tightened. Harlan. A pause. Not denial. Not surprise. Just recognition. You found it, he said. Not a question. A statement. Yes, she said. Another pause. Longer this time. Heavy. You don't understand, he said finally. Mendez's jaw tightened. Then explain it to me. A faint sound on the other end. Movement. Maybe a car door. Maybe footsteps. You were supposed to leave it alone, he said. And now, there it was. Not panic. Not desperation. Something else. Frustration. Like something carefully maintained had just been disrupted.
20 years, Mendez said.
You kept it buried for 20 years. Silence. Then, I kept things from getting worse. The words hung there.
Wrong.
Completely wrong. Mendez's voice hardened. You killed her. Another pause. And this time, something cracked. Not fully, but enough.
No, he said.
The word came slower. Less certain. She wasn't supposed to die. The air shifted. Everything sharpened. Because that wasn't denial. That was admission. Mendez stepped away from the others, lowering her voice. Then what happened? Breathing on the other end. Measured. Controlled. Fighting for something. Control. She knew something she shouldn't, he said. The words came carefully now. Chosen. She went to the wrong place. Asked the wrong questions. Mendez's mind raced. What place? No answer. Harlan, what place? Another sound.
Closer now.
Engine. Movement. Heavy things, he said quietly. Things people don't want found. The line went dead. Mendez stood still, phone pressed to her ear long after the call ended. Because that wasn't just a confession. It was a warning. Not about the past. About something else. Something bigger. She turned back toward the opening in the floor. Toward the remains. Toward the truth that had finally surfaced. And realized. This wasn't the end of the case. It was the beginning of something far worse. Because Emily Carter hadn't just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. She had seen something. Something worth killing for. And someone had just made it clear that whatever it was still out there. The call didn't echo. It settled. Heavy. Final. Like something that had been waiting years to be said and now couldn't be taken back. Mendez lowered the phone slowly, her reflection faint in the black screen, eyes sharper now. More focused than before. Around her, the scene continued. Technicians moving, voices exchanging instructions, the controlled chaos of a discovery unfolding, but it all felt secondary. Because the case had just changed. Again. Not just a body. Not just a buried truth. A motive. And not the kind that ends with one person. Heavy things people don't want found. Those words didn't belong to panic. They belonged to something organized. Something deliberate. Something that existed before Emily Carter ever stepped into it. And might still exist now. Mendez turned back to the opening. The remains were being carefully exposed now, layer by layer, each movement slow, precise, respectful. The earth around the body had compacted over time, sealing everything in place, preserving more than it should have. Time had hidden her, but it hadn't erased her. A forensic tech looked up as Mendez approached. Preliminary view, female, adult. Position suggests she was placed here, not dropped. No coffin, no wrapping beyond clothing.
Placed.
Not discarded. Controlled. Mendez nodded once, absorbing it. How long until full extraction? Couple hours. Maybe less if we don't hit complications. She checked her watch. Time was moving. And somewhere out there, so was Harlan. Because that call hadn't been an accident. He hadn't called to confess. He called to control. To measure how much she knew. To see how far things had gone. And now, he had his answer. Mendez stepped away, dialing again. This time, dispatch. I need an APB issued, she said. Deputy Mark Harlan. Vehicle, badge, everything. He's a person of interest in an active homicide investigation. A pause on the other end. Detective, you're sure? Yes. No hesitation. Because uncertainty was a luxury they no longer had. He made contact, she added. He knows we found the site. That changed everything. The tone on the other end shifted immediately. Understood. Units will be notified. Mendez ended the call, already moving. Because standing here wasn't enough anymore. The scene was important, but the man who created it was still out there. Still moving. Still thinking. And every minute gave him more distance. She stepped outside, the heat hitting her again, harsher this time, like the world hadn't caught up with what had just happened inside that building. Her car door slammed shut behind her. Engine on. Gravel spinning under the tires as she pulled out. Her mind replayed the call. You don't understand. That wasn't defense. That was positioning. Like, he believed there was a version of this story where he wasn't the villain. Where what he did made sense. Mendez drove faster. Because she'd seen that before. People who justify. People who reshape the past until it fits the version they can live with. And those people are dangerous. Not because they hide, because they believe they're right. Red Hollow came into view again, unchanged on the surface, unaware of the fracture running underneath it.
Sirens now.
Distant at first, then closer. Units already moving. The station lot was half empty when she arrived. Officers deployed. Searching. Containing. Reacting. Mendes stepped out, catching Collins as he moved past. Where is he?
Collins shook his head.
Left right after you did.
Didn't say anything.
Just gone. Of course. Mendes exhaled sharply. Vehicle? Still in the system. No hits yet. He had a head start. Not huge, but enough. Get me his last known patrol logs, she said. Anywhere he'd go if he needed to disappear fast. Collins nodded, already turning back inside. Mendes followed. Because now it wasn't about the past. It was about prediction. Where does someone go when everything starts collapsing? Not random. Not far. Somewhere familiar. Somewhere controlled. Somewhere safe. She pulled up the map again.
Routes.
Locations. Patterns. Blackridge wasn't the only place he returned to. There were others. Less obvious. Less connected.
But there.
A cluster formed. Southwest of town. Old industrial stretch. Long abandoned. Too remote for regular patrol. Too forgotten to attract attention. Mendes circled it. Because people don't build one hiding place. They build backups. Contingencies. Places they can move between without being seen. She grabbed her keys again. I'm heading out, she told Collins. Back up.
Yes.
But not too loud. I don't want him spooked before we get close. Collins nodded. Mendes was already moving. Back in the car. Back on the road. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. The landscape shifted as she drove southwest. Less open. More broken. Old structures appearing like ghosts, collapsed warehouses, rusted frames, empty lots that used to mean something. Now, they meant nothing, which made them perfect. She slowed as she approached the first site on her list. Nothing.
Second.
Nothing. Third. She saw it. A vehicle. Parked just off the road. Half hidden behind a line of overgrown brush. Engine cold. But recent. Her pulse sharpened. Because she recognized it. Harlan's. Mendes killed her engine, stepping out slowly, scanning the area. No movement. No sound. But that didn't mean empty. It meant waiting. She moved toward the structure ahead. A low, concrete building, partially collapsed, roof caved in on one side. Another abandoned place. Another forgotten space. The kind that doesn't get searched unless someone knows to look. Her hand moved to her weapon. Not drawn, but ready. Every step deliberate. Every breath controlled. The entrance was dark. Cool air spilling out from inside. She paused just outside. Listening. Nothing. Then, a sound. Not metal this time. Not wind. Footsteps. Inside. Slow. Measured. Like someone who knew exactly where they were going. Mendes stepped in. Light shifting around her. Eyes adjusting. Heart steady. Because this was it. No more distance. No more guessing. Just the truth. Standing somewhere in the dark ahead. And for the first time, since the case reopened, she wasn't chasing it. It was right in front of her. Waiting. The darkness inside the structure didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. Not by movement alone, but by intention. Like the space itself had been prepared for a moment like this, waiting quietly, holding its breath until someone finally stepped inside and disturbed it. Mendes didn't rush. She never did in moments like this. Speed belonged to panic. And panic got people killed. Her flashlight cut a narrow line through the interior. Broken concrete, twisted metal beams, fragments of a roof that had long given up trying to hold its shape. The air was colder than outside, carrying that stale underground weight that clung to old places where time had stopped moving forward. But something here hadn't stopped. Footsteps. Still present. Still ahead. Slow. Measured. Deliberate. Not fleeing. Not hiding. guiding. Mendez advanced one step at a time, her hand steady near her weapon but not drawing it. Not yet, because drawing it would mean she had already decided what this was. And she still needed confirmation. The sound shifted slightly, metal scraping lightly against concrete, followed by a pause so precise it felt intentional, like whoever was making it understood rhythm as communication.
Clang.
Not the chain from Blackridge. Something else. Different pitch, different resonance, but still controlled, still deliberate. She turned a corner inside the structure and saw it. A wider chamber opened up ahead, formed by partial collapse. The roof above had caved in, allowing strips of sunlight to cut through dust-filled air like fractured beams. The ground was uneven, layered with debris that had accumulated over years of abandonment. And in the center, a shape. Harlan. Standing still. Not running. Not surprised. Waiting. That alone shifted everything. Because fugitives don't wait. Guilty men don't stand in open light unless they've already accepted what comes next. Mendez stopped just short of entering the space fully, keeping herself partially concealed behind a broken pillar. The distance between them wasn't large. 20 feet. Maybe less. But it felt longer. Measured in everything that had happened before this moment. You followed me, Harlan said.
His voice was calm.
Almost conversational. No strain. No urgency. Mendez stepped out fully now, letting the flashlight rest on him. I didn't have to, she said. A faint exhale from him. Not laughter. Not relief. Something closer to resignation. You found Blackridge, he said. So, it was always going to come here. Then you knew I would, she replied. A pause. The kind that holds weight. Harlan shifted slightly, not moving toward her, not moving away, just adjusting his stance. I didn't think you'd get that far, he said. That was it. Not denial. Not confusion. An acknowledgement of scale. Of progression. Mendez tightened her grip slightly. You want to tell me what I just walked into? Harlan looked at her for a long moment. Not scanning, not calculating, just observing, like he was trying to decide how much of the truth she could carry without breaking under it. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he said finally. The words landed carefully, controlled, practiced. Mendez didn't respond, because that sentence was always the first crack, always the beginning of something bigger. Harlan continued. She shouldn't have been there, he said. Emily Carter wasn't part of it. Part of what? Silence. Then, a slow exhale. You ever find something you're not supposed to see? He asked. Mendez didn't move. Every day. A faint shift in his expression. Not amusement. Recognition. Then you know what happens when you do, he said. The wind moved through the broken structure above them, shifting dust across the floor in thin waves. The light from the ceiling fractured slightly as clouds passed overhead, changing the room's tone from bright to dim in seconds. Harlan stepped back half a pace. Not retreat. Positioning. You didn't kill her, Mendez said. His eyes flickered. Just once. She died because she got too close. That was confirmation. Not full, but enough. Mendez stepped forward slightly. Too close to what? Harlan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked past her, toward the entrance, toward the outside world, as if checking whether anyone else was approaching. Then back to her. People think Red Hollow is empty, he said. Like nothing important passes through it. Like it's just another forgotten town. He paused. But it's not empty. Mendez's mind shifted immediately. Because this wasn't confession. This was framing. You're talking about trafficking? She asked. Harlan didn't confirm.
Didn't deny.
He just exhaled again. Logistics, he said instead. Movement. Storage. Things that don't belong here but pass through anyway because no one looks too closely. Mendez felt the pattern tighten. Blackridge.
The tape.
The second voice. Heavy things. You were part of it, she said. Harlan's jaw tightened slightly. I was keeping it from spilling into places it shouldn't, he said. There it was again. Justification. Protection reframed as necessity. Mendez shook her head slightly. And Emily? A pause. Longer this time. She saw something she shouldn't have, he said again. Same line. Reinforced. Rehearsed. Mendez stepped closer. Say it clearly, she said. What did she see? Harlan's eyes dropped briefly, then rose again. There were shipments, he said. Unregistered. Not supposed to come through the county route. She saw one of the transfers near the highway. Mendez felt the pieces shift. Highway 16. Payphone call. 37 seconds. Emily Carter didn't just disappear. She reacted. She reported it? Mendez asked. Harlan nodded once. To the wrong person, he said. Or the right person, depending on how you look at it. The air between them tightened. Because now the question wasn't just what happened. It was who controlled what happened next. You intercepted it, Mendez said. Harlan didn't answer. But he didn't need to. Silence was enough. Mendez's voice lowered. So, Blackridge. He nodded.
Was storage, he said.
Temporary. Controlled access. Things moved in and out. Emily wasn't part of that system. She just saw it. And you buried her for that? His expression changed slightly now. Something harder underneath the calm. I didn't bury her, he said. I tried to contain it. The word tried hit differently. Because it implied failure. Or limitation. Mendez took another step. You're still protecting it, she said. Harlan's eyes narrowed slightly. Protecting people, he corrected. That distinction mattered to him. Mendez could hear it. People versus system. Truth versus structure. Control versus collapse. You think I don't know what happens when it comes out? He asked. You think I haven't seen what happens when things like this get exposed without control? Mendez didn't respond. Because now he was revealing more than he intended. Not guilt.
Fear.
Not for himself. For something larger. Harlan stepped slightly to the side, moving closer to a collapsed section of wall. I tried to stop escalation, he said. Emily wasn't supposed to get involved. But she did. And once she did.
He stopped.
Not because he lost the thought. Because he chose not to finish it. Mendez noticed. Always noticed. What happened after she made that call? She asked. Harlan didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched again. Longer. He looked down briefly. Then back up. I told them it was handled, he said finally. Mendez froze slightly. Because that sentence was not what she expected. Not I handled it. Not I buried it. I told them. That meant higher. Outside him. Above him. Systemic. Her voice dropped. Who did you tell? Harlan didn't answer. And for the first time since this began, the calm broke. Not dramatically. Not violently. Just enough. Enough for something underneath to surface. And, in that moment, a distant sound echoed from outside the structure. Engine. Not hers. Another vehicle. Arriving. Mendez didn't look away from Harlan. But she knew. The case had just expanded again. And whatever was coming next was no longer contained to two people in an abandoned building. It was something larger. Something that had been waiting longer than Emily Carter ever realized. And now, it was finally starting to move. The engine didn't just approach. It arrived like a statement. Slow at first, distant, then growing louder through the hollow bones of the abandoned structure until the entire building seemed to register its presence. Dust trembled faintly from the vibration. Loose fragments of concrete shifted somewhere deeper inside the ruins. Mendez didn't look away from Harlan. But she felt it. The shift. Because sound like that doesn't belong to chance. It belongs to decision. Harlan heard it too. His posture changed in the smallest possible way, shoulders tightening, breath recalibrating, eyes flicking briefly toward the entrance behind Mendez. Not panic. Calculation. Mendez noticed immediately. You weren't alone, she said quietly. Harlan didn't respond. That was answer enough. The engine cut off. Silence rushed back in, heavier than before. A door opened outside. Footsteps. Multiple. Measured. Not rushing. Not searching blindly. Approaching with intent. Mendez finally broke eye contact with Harlan, just for a second, angling her flashlight toward the entrance. Shadows moved against the light spilling in from outside. Then figures appeared. Not deputies. Not forensics. No markings of local law enforcement. Just plain clothes. Neutral.
Controlled.
Unmarked presence. Too coordinated to be civilians. Too calm to be random. Harlan exhaled slowly. Almost imperceptibly. Like a man confirming something he already knew would happen. Mendez shifted her stance.
You called them, she said.
Harlan didn't deny it. They were already moving, he said instead. That distinction mattered. Not summoned. Responding. Mendez tightened her grip on her weapon now. Not fully drawn. But no longer uncertain. The first man stepped into the structure. Then a second. Then a third. They didn't spread out. They didn't rush. They formed a loose perimeter inside the opening, cutting off the easiest exit paths without needing to be told. Professional. Experienced. Structured. Mendez scanned them quickly. No visible badges. No standard uniforms. But their positioning told her everything she needed. This wasn't a rescue. This was containment. One of them spoke first. Not to her. To Harlan. Is it contained? The man asked.
Contained.
Not resolved. Not secured.
Contained.
Mendez felt the words settle into place like a lock turning. Harlan nodded once. Yes. The man shifted his gaze to Mendez. Only then. She wasn't supposed to get this far, he said. It was an accusation. It was assessment. Like her presence was an operational deviation. Mendez stepped forward slightly. Who are you? She asked. No immediate answer. The man looked at Harlan again, as if checking permission. Harlan gave a small nod. And only then did he speak. Federal Coordination Unit, he said simply. No badge. No jurisdiction specified. Just classification. Mendez didn't lower her weapon. Federal doesn't erase homicide, she said. A faint pause. One of the men near the back shifted slightly, adjusting his stance. But the first man remained calm. This case was classified years ago, he said. Mendez felt something tighten in her chest. Classified. That word carried weight. It redefined everything around it. Harlan finally spoke again. She wasn't supposed to see the secondary route, he said. Mendez turned back to him immediately. Secondary route? Harlan didn't look at her. He looked at the floor. Like the answer was already embedded in it. Blackridge wasn't the only point, he said. That changed the geometry of everything. Not one site. Not one chain. A network. Mendez's mind raced.
The tape.
The rhythm. The metal sound.
Clang. Pause. Clang.
Not random. Not isolated. A system. You used multiple locations, she said. Harlan nodded once. Rotation, he admitted. Minimizing exposure. Mendez felt the implication form before he even finished speaking. Emily hadn't just stumbled into one secret. She had stumbled into infrastructure. The man near the entrance stepped forward slightly. This is no longer active, he said. Mendez snapped her attention to him. No longer active, she repeated. He nodded. The network was shut down following containment failure at Blackridge. Containment failure. Not exposure. Not discovery. Failure. Mendez felt the ground shift under everything she thought she understood. So, Emily was what? She asked. Collateral? Harlan finally looked at her again. And this time, there was something different in his expression. Not justification. Not control. Fatigue. She was never supposed to be part of it, he said again, quieter now. But once she saw it, there was no way to isolate the breach without escalation. Escalation. Mendez almost laughed. You buried her under concrete, she said. That's your definition of escalation control? Harlan didn't respond immediately. And, in that silence, the truth sharpened. The men around them stayed still. Not reacting. Not surprised. This wasn't news to them. That realization landed harder than anything else. Mendez lowered her flashlight slightly. You all knew, she said. No answer. Not needed. She turned slightly, looking at each of them.
20 years, she said.
And you let this stay buried. One of the men finally spoke. Containment preserved broader stability. Mendes shook her head slowly.
No, she said.
You preserved yourselves. The tension in the room shifted immediately. Not explosive, but directional, like something aligning toward a breaking point. Harlan's voice came softer now. You don't understand what was moving through here, he said. Mendes stepped forward. Then explain it. A long pause. The kind that suggests layers. People think it was just logistics, he said. But it wasn't just goods. It was information. Movement routes. People tied to things they shouldn't have been tied to. Mendes felt the pattern extend further than she wanted it to. So Emily saw a transfer, she said. And she documented it. Harlan nodded slightly. And she sent it to the wrong line. That phrase again. Wrong line. Not wrong person. Wrong structure. Mendes's voice dropped. And that's why she died. Silence. No correction this time. Just wait. The man at the entrance spoke again. We need to secure remaining exposure points, he said. Exposure points. Not crime scenes. Mendes felt something shift in her understanding again. This isn't over, she said.
Harlan met her eyes.
For the first time. No control. No calm certainty. Just reality. No, he said. It isn't. A sound echoed deeper in the structure. Metal shifting. Not wind this time. Not debris. Intentional movement from somewhere below. Mendes turned slightly toward it. What is that? She asked. No one answered immediately. Then Harlan spoke. You opened it too early. Mendes froze. Opened what? But Harlan wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking down. At the ground. At the same place where the slab had been broken open earlier. At something beneath it. Something that wasn't just Emily Carter. Something that wasn't supposed to be disturbed yet. The federal man spoke sharply. Containment breach protocol, now. And in that instant, Mendes understood something worse than everything before it. Emily Carter wasn't the end of this case. She was the trigger point. And whatever had been sealed beneath that concrete wasn't just evidence. It was the reason everything had stayed buried for 20 years. And now, it was waking up. The ground didn't explode. It shifted. Subtle at first, so slight it could have been mistaken for vibration from distant movement. But then it came again. A deeper tremor, traveling through the fractured concrete beneath their feet like something pressing upward from a space that had been sealed too long. Mendes felt it in her boots before she heard it anywhere else. Not sound. Pressure. Harlan stepped back half a pace. Not fear. Recognition. That detail mattered more than anything else. Because fear is instinct. Recognition is knowledge. Everyone out, the federal man said sharply, already moving toward the entrance. But no one moved immediately. Because movement implies control. And control was already slipping. The third tremor hit harder. A visible crack formed along the edge of the broken slab, spidering outward through dust and debris that had settled for years without interruption. Fine particles lifted into the air, drifting in slow motion through the fractured light. Mendes raised her weapon slightly, not toward any person, but toward the unknown beneath them. What's under there? She demanded. No answer came fast enough. That silence told her everything. Harlan finally spoke, voice lower than before. It wasn't fully sealed. Mendes turned toward him instantly. Explain that. He hesitated. For the first time since she'd met him. He hesitated like someone choosing between truth and survival. The lower section, he said. It was never stabilized after Blackridge. We only contained the upper exposure point. Only. That word changed everything again. Not fixed. Not secured. Only contained. The structure trembled again, stronger this time, forcing dust and loose concrete to fall from overhead beams in slow, cascading bursts. One of the federal agents moved toward the exit again. Now, he repeated. This time people moved.
Fast.
Controlled urgency replacing stillness. But Mendes didn't move. Because she was looking at something else. The crack along the slab wasn't just spreading. It was opening. A thin line of darkness appeared beneath it. Not empty space.
Depth.
She stepped closer despite the warnings around her. Mendez, move. Colin's voice came faintly from outside, having just arrived at the perimeter. But she didn't, because the darkness beneath the slab was not empty. It was structured, intentional, like something had been built below ground, not buried. A second tremor hit, and this time the slab shifted upwards slightly. Not collapse, not sink.
Rise.
Mendez felt her breath tighten. Harlan saw it too, and this time, his composure broke just enough to show urgency. You shouldn't be here when it opens, he said. When what opens? She shot back. But he didn't answer, because the sound answered instead. Not metal chain, not wind, not structural failure. A low mechanical resonance.
Deep.
Rhythmic. Coming from below. Mendez froze, because she recognized rhythm now.
Clang. Pause. Clang.
But altered.
Slower. Heavier.
Like something larger had joined the pattern. The federal agents outside shouted something indistinct, but it was swallowed by the growing vibration beneath the structure. Dust rose in continuous streams now, not settling anymore, suspended in a trembling field of movement that no longer followed physics in a normal way. Then, a sound like release. Not explosion. Not collapse. Opening. The slab split fully along its weakened seam. And beneath it,
light.
Not natural. Artificial. Faint at first, then intensifying in pulses like systems reactivating after long dormancy. Mendez stepped back instinctively this time, her weapon still raised but no longer certain what it was aimed at. Because beneath the concrete wasn't just soil. It was structure. A constructed cavity stretching deeper than the original foundation of the building. Reinforced walls. Embedded metal frameworks. Old wiring that flickered faintly as if responding to renewed power. And movement. Far below. Slow. Controlled. Not human. Not mechanical in the way she expected. Something in between. One of the federal agents swore under his breath. This wasn't in the reports, he said. Harlan's voice came quieter now. It was never in the reports. Mendez turned sharply. What is this place? Harlan finally met her eyes again. And what she saw there wasn't guilt anymore. It was inevitability. A relay site, he said. One of several. Blackridge was just surface-level storage. Mendez felt her stomach tighten. Storage for what? No immediate answer. The light below intensified again, casting flickering reflections up through the broken slab, illuminating their faces in fragmented pulses. Harlan exhaled. Movements, he said finally.
People.
Data. Things that couldn't pass through normal systems. Mendez shook her head. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you, he replied. Another tremor ran through the structure, but this one wasn't structural. It was coordinated. Like something beneath them had registered their presence. Like something was responding. Mendez stepped closer to the edge of the opening despite everything in her instincts telling her not to, and looked down. The cavity extended far deeper than expected. Layers of reinforced corridors descending in geometric patterns, some sections still intact, others partially collapsed. And along the walls, panels, old monitoring systems, inactive screens flickering weakly as if trying to reboot after decades of silence. And then, movement again. Far below, a shape shifting through the dim light. Not clearly visible, but undeniably present. Mendez stepped back immediately. What the hell is down there? She asked again. Something that shouldn't have been reactivated. The phrase hit differently now. Reactivated. Not discovered. Not exposed. Reactivated. Mendez turned toward him sharply. This is why Emily died, she said. Harlan didn't deny it, but he didn't confirm it either.
She saw the relay, he said.
Not the surface operation. The structure beneath it. Mendez's voice lowered. And she reported it. Harlan nodded slightly. To someone who wasn't cleared to receive it. The implications spread fast. Too fast. Because now it wasn't just corruption. It was hierarchy. Control over knowledge. Over information flow. Over truth itself. Another sound echoed from below. This one different. Less mechanical. More reactive. Like something had noticed them noticing it. The federal man moved closer to Harlan. "We need shutdown authorization," he said quickly. Harlan shook his head. "It's not under my control anymore." That sentence froze the room. Mendes stared at him. "What do you mean not under your control?" Harlan looked down again. At the opening. At the flickering light. At the structure beneath that had just reawakened. "Because it's not dormant anymore," he said. The ground trembled again. But this time, it felt like something was pushing back. From below. Against everything above. And for the first time since this began, Mendes realized the case was no longer about what had happened in 2003. It was about what had been waiting ever since. And now, it was no longer waiting.